Well, what's going on, family?
Hey, what's happening, everybody?
Welcome back to Ministry Talks Podcast. Pastor West, this is episode 8.
Episode 8, man.
The final one.
Exactly.
I can't believe how fast it's gone.
It's gone by fast, but it's been fun.
It has. It's been really good. I hope and pray that you've enjoyed the content. If this is your first time, thank you for joining us. If you have not liked, subscribed, make sure you do that. You can go to Spotify. You can go to YouTube. We even have a TikTok because we are trying to make sure we get the word out there to many people as possible. You can also email us at mintalkspodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. Thank you guys for all the emails that have been coming in.
Yes,
Thank you.
in the comments. Now, we drink a coffee with almost every episode.
That's right.
And where can they get more content? Because we've got some shorts and we've got some things that we're doing, but this season we did it different.
That's right. This season we introduced BuyMeACoffee.com/mintalkspodcast, and it'll be in the description of the video here. And what we're asking for is if you really like what's going on, buy us a coffee. Yeah. A membership is $5, $5 either one time or $5 a month. And there are other ways that you can become a member,
yes.
Different levels. And with those different levels, you get different things, different videos, different resources. Whatever we decide to put out, we really want to be able to just bless you guys who are supporting us. And so saying thank you. It's really as simple as buying us a coffee. It's really great.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for our final episode.
Oh, man, me too. I've been looking forward to this.
We mentioned about having a special guest, and obviously you can see to my right, we have Pastor Charlie Alford.
In the house.
He's in the house. I've known Pastor Charlie since I was in the 4th grade. Grew up in children's ministry, youth ministry. If the summer camp walls and buses could talk.
Oh, my goodness. Whew, I wouldn't be a pastor.
I feel like I wouldn't either. I feel like we repented. Sure, and we went to that altar every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday, bro.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
But we just want to dive into a conversation. Yeah. This is a space where we don't know everything, but we are walking through things and through anything with people.
That's right.
And so we've got some questions just about life, ministry, your family. Can you just tell us about who you are, your family, how long you've been in ministry for, and then we can kind of get right into questions.
I grew up in church, man, like yourself, man. Grew up in church.
Under the pew.
Under the pew, man. What's crazy, I was actually, my first time, I've gone to the same church for 30 years. And the first time I went, I was in foster care as a baby. Right. And if it wasn't for the church that I went to, I wouldn't have got adopted.
Wow.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Like, you talk about God's grace and God's, God's provision for your life.
Yeah.
And so the church I attended, River of Life, which I attended for years, man. And to be honest, if it wasn't for that church, man, I don't know where I'd be. But God's goodness, man. And so now we are at Church for All.
Okay.
With me, my wife. I've been married for almost 16 years, bro.
All right, come on.
Almost
16
16
that's
years,
crazy.
bro.
That's good.
Remember when y'all met?
Yeah.
Remember when y'all met?
Yeah. My man's. Yeah. So been married for almost 16 years, 5 kids. It's man.
Y'all figured out what causes that, right?
Yeah. A little bit late.
Okay.
A little bit late.
All right.
But
just checking. I'm just checking.
We couldn't afford
you guys
cable, and I hated to read. And so
just as long as you figured out what causes it to stop, though.
Yeah, we
There you
did.
go.
No,
Okay,
for sure, bro. Yeah, I figured that out.
Okay, good,
So,
good.
it takes some people a little longer
Than others.
And
I know men. I know men
man.
right now that are 50 who aren't, and they won't.
Oh no, man.
I'm not trying to get too TMI.
Nah, bro.
I have a
Mother-in-law's birthday. I'm done.
There you go.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
Quit asking when these
I was
kids is
done.
coming.
Yeah, don't be asking no more.
my goodness.
But I got 4 girls, 1 boy. I got 2 high schoolers now.
Man.
One's getting ready to drive. You know what that's
Yes,
like,
I
bro.
do. Oh my gosh.
Afraid for my life.
Mm-hmm.
Get off the road.
Stay home.
But no, but all my kids serving church, helping church, and so that in itself is a blessing. And so, but right now I work for Vine Maple Place, a nonprofit that helps people who are homeless or facing homelessness.
Awesome.
And so I've been doing that for a little over 6 months now, and jumped into that.
Okay.
And really, man, God's softening my heart for things that before I don't think my heart was really softened for, man. And so understanding people and loving people for where they're at. And that's so cool. It's been a journey, man.
I love
that.
I love that. Yeah. Well, hey, I just want to get right into it.
Yeah,
you
man.
mentioned, I mentioned, we grew up together at the same church. Yep. I am currently occupying your position that you and your wife held for years.
How many years did you hold that position?
So, I pastored at Man, first off, I didn't even start off as a pastor, bro.
No, you didn't.
No, I started off as a maintenance manager, man.
There you go.
Which is it's crazy because I don't know anything about maintaining anything in a building. So you want to talk about people's faith in your boy? I don't even know how I got the job. I really don't, because there were times I had to come and ask, like, I don't know how to do any of this, bro. But I was good at telling people what to do. I was real good at telling people what to do.
So you had a great team. You had a great team around you.
That's why God blessed you with 5 kids.
Yeah,
Okay,
man, I'm real good at it. I'm real good at that, man.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and so start, which everybody should, because if there's something that'll try you, be maintenance at a church. I'm trying to tell you.
Right.
But no, it taught me a lot. And so then after that, I ended up being the youth pastor for about 4 years.
Wait, how long were you? How long were you the maintenance manager for before you transitioned to youth pastor?
A little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little over a year. Yep. So yeah, man. And that was a whole new role, because growing up, I wasn't a part of like any type of like schooling when it came for pastoring. So it was pretty raw. Like it was it was like if I thought it, I was gonna do it.
There you go.
Deal with the consequences later. So.
That's good.
But no, I wasn't a part of no internship or anything like, which I think kind of helped.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't no guidelines where I felt like I couldn't do something.
Okay.
And our pastor was so dope, because he allowed me to really, anything short of sin, he was like, go for it. And I'm like, all right.
There you go. Nice.
So that's his character.
So, yeah,
sure.
man. And so. And having people along the way who help lead you and guide you help too.
So I had somebody ask me this question. I want to ask you, because I was thinking about it, when this episode was on the way. I was like brewing on it. How was it transitioning into pastoring where you grew up at? Like, because obviously the perspective changes, the lens changes, because you go from attending to now being on staff. Yeah. How was that for you?
Man, I think the hardest thing was is everybody knew me as Betsy's son.
Mama Betsy.
Yeah, Betsy's son. And while it's cute and it's cool that a lot of people know my mom, I got a name.
Right.
And it's like, it gets to a point to where you're like, man, like, don't minimize my gift because my mom's popularity is so big.
In which, by the way, and I got to put this out there, his mom can sing. Yeah, sang. S-A-N.
Why you got to put that out there, bro? I can't sing, okay? There's no singing ability here, so don't ask, okay?
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, like, you had to really walk into identity then, aside from that.
Well, and people's expectation of who they thought I should be because my mom sang.
Wow.
Right. So
that's something I never knew.
Well, and that's huge for anybody in ministry, though. I mean, 100%. The expectation. So we've talked about this before in one of the episodes. Is that my wife? She laid it out in the very beginning. She's like, "I'm not a typical pastor's wife.
Let's go.
I will be here and I will support everything. And this is our ministry. This is Wes and I's ministry. We know that.
Yeah.
But." She sits on the back row. She doesn't do children's ministry.
Right.
Like she's not the whole right. And she says, "Listen, I'm good with this, and I'm good with that, and I will be your best friend, and but don't expect me." And that's a really big deal, is expectations, right? Spoken or unspoken.
Yeah, 100%.
It's really it really does make or break a lot of ministries.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Well, okay, so you served as a youth pastor, what you said, for 6 years?
It was a little over 4.
Okay, so
4.
The transition from being in a church that was established to now being a part of a church plant with Church for All. How was that like for you? What was that like for you and Alicia? Kind of, know, because it wasn't just a you thing. It was a y'all. It was a family unit.
100%.
So how was that process?
Yeah, that was. Here's the thing: when we resigned from the river in 2019. We really didn't know what we were going to do. I mean, essentially in our heads, we were like, man, we're going to plant a church. And I thank God to this day that we didn't do that. Just because I think there's a lot of bitterness and anger that you store over the years that you don't think it's big enough to really deal with. So you kind of just bury it and keep going.
Right? Wow.
Okay. And not only that, but we get to a place, especially when you work in a church, like if you feel good, you are good.
Right.
Which is a lie.
Say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's not true.
If you feel good, you are
And
good.
so all it did was take me about a month to realize that after we resigned, and I couldn't hide behind preaching. Right. And
when you finally could breathe.
When I could breathe and be like, man, I'm not okay.
Right.
I'm not all right.
Right.
And so after that, man, I was really trying to go to churches where a lot of people didn't know me and where I could just sit and chill. That's where I was, bro.
Yeah.
And what's hard is you tend to go where your kids like, right? So
Right.
if my kids like a church, I'm more apt to go there. Parents are more apt to go there. And the church my kids liked, I didn't want to go to.
Right.
I was like, I'm not trying to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
we ended up going. And it took me a while. Like it took people had to take me out to coffee to convince me.
to like join in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, nah, man, I'm just trying to chill. And so it took a while, but as soon as Pastor Matt, who's our head pastor and our old youth pastor, buddy boy.
Oh,
yeah. oh, Pastor Matty Ice.
Matty Ice.
Nah.
That's what we used to call him.
Yeah, man. And he told us that they wanted to plant a church. And I was like, he said, go pray about it. And I said, there's not a lot of things you got to pray about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to stuff. And that was one of them where I was just like, I don't think I need to. I think I know.
Yeah.
And I promise you, God told me in that moment that I'm supposed to serve with him. Like
Wow.
I knew it. Like it wasn't. Yeah. And at the moment we were at another church where I was just like, I know I'm not called to this church. I'm called to this person.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
And so
That's good.
I think that's what really helped me, my wife, my family, and I.
Yeah.
Because my kids were having it tough too. You don't realize, like, when you resign from a church, your kids feel it, man. There's relationships that are severed. There's like you do a lot more than you think you do.
Talk about that,
Yeah.
because you're talking about something that most people, they
don't think about it until it happens.
100%.
Yeah.
Most people see pastors transition or leave,
100%.
and then they just feel like everything's honky dory.
Yeah,
you know what I
nah,
mean? And,
yeah.
and that is not the case. Where you are knee deep. Like your family is
100%.
sacrificing,
Right.
you studying, your family is sacrificing. You know,
Yeah.
so
Bro,
that's
for
great.
like the first month, man. My kids were like, "Are we gonna go back?"
Mm,
And I'm like, "Nah, we ain't going back."
okay.
2 reasons we weren't going back. 2 reasons I didn't even want to show up. One, because I didn't want to get in the way of what you were trying to build.
Right.
And just make it weird, right? Like you're just like, this is awkward. I don't want
Right.
to do that to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And just give somebody the time needed to build
Yeah.
what God's called them to build without interfering.
Right.
And so, but also realizing, man, like I'm so used to being planted somewhere that it was so unfamiliar not to be. Where I was just like, this is weird. I've gone to this place for 30 years, bro. Think about that. 30 years of my life, I'm here. That's all I know. I know the culture. I know the people. I know how to act if I come in on a Sunday and I'm not feeling it. I can at least act like I am.
Right.
Like,
No,
you
for
just
sure.
know it.
Yeah.
Man. And it's in you. And so when you go somewhere else, the hardest part, I think, for my wife, and I could probably speak for her, is you do things that you're used to at another church, but it can be unfamiliar there, right?
Ooh, that's
Right?
good.
And you're comparing everything to what you just came out of.
Ooh.
And so that was, bruh.
Comparison.
I think we might have to make that an episode in
Bruh.
season 3.
Bruh, I'm telling
comparison, yeah.
you. And you don't even realize it. That's
Well-
what's crazy is other people do who aren't from that culture.
Right.
Right. No.
Yeah,
Right,
And
right.
you're like,
Right.
yeah. So that was tough, bro.
No,
You got
that's
something,
that's
bro?
good, man. That's good. Well, no, I'm, your kids. So we started talking about your kids. Did any of them during this transition? Because how long have you been with Church for All?
A little over a year and a half.
Okay, so in that year and a half, which was probably pandemic time, right?
Yep.
Okay, in that year and a half, did your kids end up experiencing some sort of like crisis of faith or questioning, or I hate this term even though it's a
Sure.
big deal, like the whole deconstructing thing. Like have they,
I think this is about to get deep. Here's what happened. I'm be 100% with you.
Yeah.
When we resigned from the river, there were things that we realized that were happening with our kids that we were so blind to because of the busyness of ministry.
right? Oh, that's
So
good.
so when we resigned from the river, there were conversations we had to have with our kids that they were dealing with privately, but we were so busy and focused on other things we didn't take time to see it.
Oh wow.
Man.
And so we had kids who didn't care about God or care to know God. And you could almost see really this heart within one of my children that it was almost like they felt like church was taking us away from them.
So then there was some resentment.
Right.
Right.
That either that or they were dealing with things that we were almost glad that we weren't really going to a church at the time, just because I didn't want them to feel alienated or feel like they couldn't bring it up
Right.
within the church that they were going
Do
to.
you think
that's good.
Do you think that there was a pressure for them to be spot on because mom and dad were the youth pastors?
I don't think there was necessarily, I think like they were just so used to the church, right? So it was one of those things where it's like everybody knew them. They were dedicated at the church, like people knew who they were. And so I don't feel like, I'm a firm believer that they probably don't really know Jesus, right? Like they're still small. They just go to church. They do what, they feel like they're supposed to do or not.
Okay. Yeah.
But the one thing that I was really grateful for is I was having a conversation with my son, and it was probably right around the time that we had resigned. And I told him, I said something, and he's like, Dad, I don't do that. I'm a Christian. And I was like it threw me off for a second. I was like, bruh. Like it made me freeze for a second, but it was one of those things where it was just like, it was so unexpected, but at the same time you realize like we could take our kids away from the church, but it's more than just a building to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
How old were Mariana and Peyton? Were they in your youth ministry when you were?
Mariana was like getting ready to start. My oldest daughter, 15 years old now. We took her to her first youth conference.
Oh, yeah.
Before we resigned, and I was just like, that'll have you shook. Because she done went up for prayer, and I was like, what you need prayer for, bro? Everything in your house good. What you doing? I was like,
put your hand down.
You better put your hand down.
Yeah. I was like, girl, you put your hand down, right?
We know Jesus. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Yeah. They calling all them other kids up there, not you. Get back here.
Oh, but was that a eye opener for you when you witnessed that?
Oh yeah. It was one of those things where you're just like, dang, like it just reminds you that they're always watching. It reminds you that they're always there, and so there's a level of accountability they bring. Yeah. That I think you can forget sometimes. Right. And so it definitely did.
Because like that's where I'm at. Like we have had the privilege, as long as we've been in youth ministry. Now you've been doing ministry for 25 years. I've been serving since I was 13. So I've been doing it about 20 years serving wise. But in youth ministry, probably right at 8-9 years. Where we've had the privilege out of those years to have Savannah and Bella both in the youth ministry. So for me, I've actually appreciated it because it's kept me honest. It's kept me real. And majority of the time, anytime I preach, something is coming out of my house that I just got done living that I have to reiterate to people. Here's a question I got for you, man. How was it transitioning from youth ministry to now teaching pastor?
And then before you answer that question, I identify for us and for our viewers, what does the teaching pastor do? Like, what is your job?
That's even better.
So my pastor's funny. Okay. Usually people have a preaching schedule, which we got one of those. We don't always go according to it, which I love though, because it really does. Like you gotta stay ready. And so
taking that scripture for real.
Yeah, man.
You
so
better be ready.
in
season and out.
100%, bro. 100%. Which is dope though, because it teaches us how to pivot. Like when things don't, maybe the Holy Spirit's leading us one way. And it's not the way we were gonna go. And it's just he's so good at it. And so it just for us it just becomes second nature. And so as a teaching pastor, what I teach here and there around the year, but I also lead part of our First Impressions team too. And so First Impressions, for you non-churchgoers, which I hope you're listening, is when you come into a church building, I want my face to be the first face you see. I want my greeter's face to be the first face you see. We always tell them that, when somebody's deciding on a church they want to go to, it'll start in the parking lot.
Starts in the parking lot.
That's it. And so I'm over some teams, but the reality is we're doing it all together, man. And so as a teaching pastor here and there, it could be random, and Pastor Matt will be like, hey, you want to preach this week? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I hope I'm ready, right?
I'm good. Yeah.
Is the pressure on to say yes when he asks?
I will always say yes. Okay. So I learned that in college, and here's why. I had a language teacher. He always told me this. He said, "Don't ever turn down a speaking opportunity."
Ooh, that's good.
And I said, "Are you sure?" Not only that, but I remember when I did one time in youth ministry. It's funny. I was in the bathroom. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm in the bathroom, wash my hands. Pastor Matt comes in there. I'm having like the worst week. And he said, hey, do you want to share tonight? I said, no. And that was the only time I ever told him no. and I didn't speak again for a long time. So anytime he asks, I'm going to say yeah. Because he just doesn't ask. So me and him we've literally had like 45-minute conversation on the phone going through my message.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like he's like, send it to me. I'm like, okay. And we'll spend like an hour. And because me and him, we tend to think pretty similar.
Yeah.
And we both like information and we both like theology. We're kind of nerds that way. But if it wasn't for him, like, man, there's times I'm like, man, I don't know if this message would have been any type of good. But I
love that you have that access with him to be able to walk through those things.
Yeah.
And in the way he's wired, I'm laughing because because
you know how he is. Yeah.
Because you're like, well, we have a teaching schedule, but because I just know.
Yep.
But it's also kind of freeing because there's a structure that we have.
Right.
And then here's a word that we probably don't say much because people think it's weird, but we depend on the Holy Spirit.
Right,
and we like to be led by the leading of the Holy Spirit. And if I know Pastor Matt, he gonna be led. 100%. So I'm loving that. Tell us a little bit, man. I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
And I want you said something in regards to you thank God you didn't plant a church.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
We've had this conversation multiple times about how so many people are planning a church. And the reference that Pastor West gave me was everybody likes coffee, but everybody likes their coffee a different way.
That's right.
Everybody likes coffee a little different.
100%.
Are you, what is the biggest your perspective now? Like, hey, this is probably the best thing for me not planning a church. Like, do you see yourself as a senior pastor? Do you see yourself like entering a role, or are you just like, hey, I just know that this is what works for me best?
Yeah, I think early on I thought like, man, full-time ministry, like that's it. Like that's what I need to be in. And but now that I got a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And I used to say this a lot, and I think maybe working on a church staff full-time maybe kind of changed some things for me, changed some perspective for me. There's nothing obviously wrong with full-time ministry. I think that's fine. I just think there's other way that God calls you to lead people. And so for me, whether that's, I'm open to anything, right? It's one of those things, I'm open to anything. I'm just not striving after it.
Okay.
Like my dream and goal is not to be a full-time pastor.
Okay.
It's not. Like if the door opens, great. Like I'm not, if God calls me to do it, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If God called me to do it, I'm going to do it because anything else will not be fulfilling for me.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, that's where I'm at. It's just I'm kind of against. I think Matt Chandler says the arena culture. Right. I'm really kind of against that.
Yeah.
Just because the reality of it, like we need daily moments with God, not these crazy fill arena. Like those are great and those are fine.
Yeah.
But if we're doing that, but we're not spending every single day with God, having this one-on-one relationship.
Right.
Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you're not the first person I've heard say that I am okay if I never go back to full-time ministry. You've heard that before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where does that shift for you from being on full-time staff to now saying, hey, I'm okay if I never?
I think it's realizing that God's called us to reach people, not stand on stages.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that if all I'm doing is standing on the stage and that's like my end all be all,
right.
I'm not sure how beneficial that would be for my spirit and just always feeling like I have to perform for somebody. If I can lead people from a stage, but I can't lead them in a coffee shop, what am I doing? Right? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, I believe God's called you to preach the gospel 100%.
Yeah.
Like, that's what God calls people to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my mom always said this. My mom said, you should be able to preach to crowds of adults, but you also should be able to teach children. And I said, man, that's crazy. Like, because I got to a point where I was just like, it became almost an identifier for me. Where it was like, if I'm pastoring in front of large groups, like that's who I am.
Yeah.
And you learn real quick when you don't have that, who you really are,
right?
And what you really think of yourself,
right? Yeah.
And so I think that's ultimately what did it for me.
I love it.
And not only that, but when you, I love youth, like I do, like I still work with youth.
Are you that guy who's like, I'm youth pastor till I'm dead? Because I hear some people
in a sense, right? Like I want to deal with their kids when they're good, like not when they're getting on my nerves. Okay. So for my job, I work at BuyMeACoffee Place, right? And I work with children and youth. I'm an assistant manager for children and youth.
Okay.
And so I still do work with youth. I just don't work with the youth that the church like to deal with. I get the that's the youth I get.
Okay.
And I prefer it because they're real.
Right.
Yeah. They're raw.
Right.
Like when they come into our facility, it's not like when you go into church, you know what to expect, right? For the most part, if you've been to church before, like you understand. Like if I brought our youth here, they'd be like, okay, yeah, like you come here, you pray, you be quiet. Like that's their idea of what church is.
Right.
When you come to BuyMeACoffee Place, you don't really have that.
Well, no, I think the atmosphere is totally different.
It's different. Yeah. And so I love youth, man. I love youth till the day I die, for sure. For sure.
That's good. A couple questions for me then, and these are personal. These have nothing to do with like ministry transitions and things. But so the first one is, if you had the opportunity to do that transition all over again, knowing now what you've gone through, knowing now, hey, I prayed about this, or I struggled with that, or
for sure,
my wife and I, we were in agreement with this, or we weren't in agreement. Sure. Having gone through everything that you just did in a year and a half, what would you do differently?
Oof. That's a good question.
I'll say this. I would have, first off, I'll say this. I feel like the way we left River of Life was about as healthy as I could have done it. And here's why. Because I didn't go into my senior pastor's office and tell him, hey, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him I was leaving. I said, hey, this is what I feel like God's called me to do. Can you pray about it?
That's good.
That's all I said. And I walked out, and guess what? 2 weeks later, I walked back, and I said, so did you pray about it? Because this is what I feel like God's called me to do. And they prayed for me and my wife right there in their office.
Nice.
And then they said, okay, what's next steps? And I said, if I'm going to leave, I want to bring somebody in who loves God, loves you, and will go after your vision. Mm-hmm. And so...
which was not everybody's first choice.
Well, and it also, I remember when you started telling me about how all of that was going down.
I was not everybody's first choice.
Right.
You actually, and I'm going to bring some backstory just because this is the last episode, so hang with us a little bit because we're just going to extend time, whatever.
Yeah, we got some time.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to preach at Life Change Church. I was getting ready to preach 4 times that week, and it was a Wednesday night. I'm getting ready to preach the midweek, and then in preparation for the 2 Sunday services, and my phone goes off, and it's you, and you're like, hey, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like, hey, we're getting ready to transition. Mm-hmm. I feel like you're supposed to step in. I threw my phone at Heather. Right? And so then she looks at me, and she's like, well, I got to tell you something. I'm like, okay. So like, I've actually been praying that we go back to the river. Yeah. I'm like, what? She's like, but I wasn't praying for us to go back in the position. Yeah. I just wanted us 100%. To go back because Zoe was just about to be, oh my gosh, she wasn't even 6 months. Right. So Heather really wanted to get her in there. So when you sent me that text message, I was like, because the reason why I wasn't everybody's first choice, and we'll talk about this next season. Yeah. Just a lot of raw, unadulterated Isaiah. Mm-hmm. Who would cut you out? Just flat out. Yeah. So when you texted me, I was like, "No way, this is not real." Yeah. But
I remember the day when I knew, right? Because even Alicia was like, "Who's?" And I told her, I was like, "I know who." I said, it made so much. It was one of the things that made so much sense. You were just like, and I didn't care. Like I knew people were gonna feel some type of way. Oh, and I was like, gosh. I don't care. Like God's calling is more important than how you feel. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm done.
Wait, hold on. Is this thing on? Say that again for the people in the back.
Oh, 100%, man. God's calling is more important than how you feel. 100%.
That should be on a T-shirt.
100%. And I remember the week going in there and telling, because I knew a lot of our leaders. I was like, they'll stay. A lot of them. There might be a couple that might have a problem, but they'll get over it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I remember being pulled out by people. It's like, are you sure? Like, are you serious? And I was like, I don't care how you feel. Like, you know me, dog. I don't care how you feel.
Right.
like, and I think I remember when you came on, it was a Wednesday night, and through the transition, I was like, man, like these are that's what was hard, was leaving the leaders behind.
Because it becomes such a family.
Yeah. Yeah,
Every
and so
week you're with them.
every week, man. Like they would drop, but I think I've told you this before. Is, you measure how good your leadership team is not by those who follow you,
Right.
but those who will stay when you ask them to stay
And they stay.
and give as much as they did. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm seeing now.
And we've only lost 2. One transitioned to a different ministry in our church, but one had transitioned just because life. I think she got pregnant and her husband was, and that was fine. Like that was totally fine.
Yeah.
But one of the leaders was like, "I'm here to tell you on behalf of all of us, the way we stayed and served for Pastor Charlie is the way we're going to stay and serve for you."
I'm telling you.
So like, now you're talking about the transition.
Yeah.
What was it like when you finally just? Because I remember walking in on Sunday and this dude gave me the keys. This dude had a lanyard.
I did, bro. So these yours,
Do you remember
bro.
this?
These are yours.
Do you remember this?
Here you go, bro.
This dude just walked
These are
in and
yours,
was
bro.
like, "Here,
These
take
are
this,"
yours, bro.
and I'm just like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
100%. Yeah.
Man, when you finally like, okay, it happened. Because there's always the we're thinking about doing it, and then it happens.
Then it happens. Yeah, that was weird, man. That was weird,
Did you sleep in the first Sunday? Come on, tell me.
bro. I did, bro. You
Yeah,
had to.
amen.
You had to,
Amen.
bro. Yeah.
Like-
I remember, bro. I'm embarrassed to say this. I remember I met with I don't remember who it was. It might have been my cousin. He said, "Don't get used to it." He said,
Right, yeah.
He said, "You sleeping in?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't get used to it."
Don't get used to
I
it.
said,
Really?
I'm gonna try not to.
But you kept sleeping in.
I kept sleeping in, bro. Because it took it. What was crazy is that when was it? It was like they shut everything down. When was it? Like March or something?
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
March of
Yeah,
2020.
like March
Yeah.
of 20.
Right. So you had just come on.
All the
I
momentum
said,
and it was
bruh.
just stopped.
Everything, bro, just stopped.
Yep.
And so, by the grace of God, my job that I was working full time,
Yeah.
I'd gone back to, was working throughout the pandemic. And so there were things lining up along the way where I was just like, man, this, like, it reassured me. I was like, all right, like, this is a God thing for sure.
Nice.
I think what I would do differently is I would have took more time to sit and just heal,
Okay.
right? Because even after leaving the river, there's part of you you're just like, but I need to use my gift. Like, God's called me to use this gift. Right? Not only that, but, when you're a preacher and you're in your word and you're praying and you're reading, like, it's like a volcano. It erupts.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part was not throwing it up on other people and realizing it was for me. That's what was hard. That's what was hard, right? Feeling
That's good.
that like, oh, I got to give it to somebody. It was like, yeah, you. You need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that was the hardest part. And I think me and you, Pastor West, have talked about that before, the starving farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was one of those things where it was just like, not every word I get's for everybody else.
Exactly.
Right.
No,
And
that's one of the biggest detriments to a lot of pastors in ministry is they study for others and they never feed themselves.
100%.
And then you're talking about the reverse of that. Like you're getting and getting and getting, and you got no outlet, and so you just like word vomit all over people. But you have to be able to decipher what's for you,
What's for me, right?
to heal, and what's a word for someone else based in Scripture instead of, 'hey, I got a message for you.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I ain't preached in a while, so can y'all like?
Can
I
y'all
don't want to get rusty.
Yeah.
Y'all sit down. We gonna pass an offering plate too after,
right?
Yeah.
Because now I'm curious, and I think we're almost done. He's asking if you slept in on Sunday. I'm wanting to know
100%,
what was your Wednesday nights like. What was that
Oh
first?
my
What was your first
That was
Wednesday?
weird, bro. I remember it, bro.
He
We're
turned
sitting,
up. Look, he had Netflix
bro,
on. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I'm not even lying, bro. It was Wednesday night, and I'm sitting there and I'm laughing. I'm like, man, Isaiah's got to go to church right now. I'm just chilling right here.
Oh man, was it like
Yeah.
6 o'clock? You thought
It
that?
was like, yeah, it was dark. I remember, bro. It was dark outside. I'm sitting on my gun. I'm like, I ain't got to go to church.
But he has to
Isaiah
be there.
gotta go.
Yeah,
Isaiah's
Isaiah gotta
gotta
go
be
there.
there. He's in
Isaiah
there.
gotta go there.
That's hilarious and rude at the same time that you
I
thought that with
did,
a smile on.
bro.
your
All
I
right,
did.
last question, and then we'll try and wrap this up.
Yeah,
Okay, last
yeah.
question, and you can answer this one short and sweet. Doesn't have to be too deep unless that's what the Lord
Gotcha.
wants you to do. What's God teaching you right now?
Oof, man. To get by myself. I think that's the biggest thing, to get by myself, to have those moments with him. You know, it's in a day and age where everything is so busy.
Right.
Everything's so crazy.
Well, everything is also so public.
100%. Everything. And everybody want to be seen.
Right.
So what does it look like in your life to get with God and not be seen? Is that okay with you?
That's
Are you
good.
okay with that? Because one thing I've started noticing is when I go to bed and my worries are pounding me and I can't sleep, I didn't spend enough time with God.
There you go.
I didn't spend enough time by myself, being reassured that God's got it. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, man, is I don't always have to be around people, and I don't always have to be seen by people.
Yeah.
You know, and not to say that community is not important. All those things are important, but to get to a place to where, like Jesus, you can just withdraw.
Yeah.
And just be with God to the point people are looking for you. He didn't have to. See, we live in a day and age where people got to make announcements when they leave. Ain't going to be on Facebook. Text me at this number. Hit me up if you really got my number. Like we like to make announcements when we're doing something spiritual. And the reality is Jesus snuck away.
Yeah.
Like he left people looking for him.
Yeah, they were looking for him.
Right. When's the last time somebody looked for you and couldn't find you because you were with Jesus?
Wow.
And so I think that's really what God's teaching me in this season, man. It's just, regardless, like if the church never existed, if it was illegal to have a church right now, would you still have a relationship? That hits different. When you think about that, like if Church for All didn't exist, if Hope didn't exist, if River of Life didn't exist, would you still have a relationship that's still vibrant with God, where the unexpected happens because God is moving so much in your life?
Come on.
Would you still have that?
That's so good.
And there were seasons where I'd be like, man, I don't know if I still have that. Just keeping it 100, I don't know if I still have that.
Right.
And so now that's become probably one of the most important things to me. That and being okay with being myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
I'm okay with being myself.
Yep. That's it.
I'm not going to be, I don't need to be who you expect me to be. I need to be me.
Right.
Like, unapologetically. Like,
That's
I
right.
love Jesus. I love God, but I'm also Charlie.
Yeah.
And so I think those two things, man, and what's crazy is I think they go hand in hand, right? So the more you spend time with God and just being with God, the more okay you are with being you. And being okay with not everybody going to like you. You ain't going to be everybody's flavor.
No.
That's all right.
No.
That's all right. And so, I think those are the two biggest things right now, man, that I'm really focused on.
I love that, man. That's dope. I like that. Hey, thank you, Charlie. Thank
Appreciate
you for being here.
Through, man.
Thank you for blessing our crowd.
Of course.
And it's been a great time. Been a really good season for all of us. And here toward the end of January, we're wrapping it up, man.
That's
and
crazy.
Isaiah, you want to take us out, man?
Hey, listen, if you have not liked, make sure you do that. You can subscribe, share this with somebody. And we're enjoying what's happening in the comments. You can email us at mintalkspodcast@gmail.com. Once again, go to Spotify, go to YouTube. You can go to BuyUsACoffee.
.com/Men Talks Podcast.
And we love you. We cannot wait to get in touch with you. All right. Peace.